You pick up a rock without thinking about it, maybe to skip it across a lake, maybe just to hold it. There's something satisfying about the weight of a stone in your palm. But the real answer for why that feels so natural is far stranger than nostalgia. Your hand was shaped by it. Long before language, before fire, before anything you'd recognize as culture, a rock was the first piece of technology your ancestors ever trusted with their lives. Think about that for a second. Not a tool for building. A tool for defense. For hunting. For survival against animals that were faster, stronger, and better armed by nature than you were. You didn't get claws. You didn't get fangs. You got a brain that could look at a rock and see a weapon. That single realization changed the direction of an entire species. For decades, archaeologists believe the story started around 2.6 million years ago, with a culture of stone tools called the Oldowan, named after Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. Sharp flakes struck off a larger stone core. Simple. Effective. Good for cutting meat off bone. But then in 2015, a team led by archaeologist Sonia Harman found something that broke the timeline completely. At a site called Lomekwi 3 in Kenya, they uncovered stone tools dating back 3.3 million years. That's older than the genus Homo itself. Older than the humans we thought invented tool use in the first place. Whoever made those tools wasn't fully human. Not yet. But they were already thinking like a tool maker. Here's the part that should unsettle you a little. Chimpanzees use tools too. Primatologist Jill Pruett spent years observing chimps in Senegal sharpening sticks with their teeth and using them to jab at bush babies hiding in tree hollows. That's a spear. A crude one. But a spear. So the line between an animal using an object and a human wielding a weapon isn't as clean as you'd like it to be. What changed wasn't the idea of picking something up. Animals do that. What changed was what happened next inside the skull holding the rock. Your ancestors didn't just use a stone. They started asking a question no other species on Earth was asking with the same intensity. What else could this become? A rock could stay a rock. Or it could become a point. A blade. A weight on the end of a stick. Each answer required imagining a future that didn't exist yet, then reshaping the present to match it. That's not muscle. That's foresight. And foresight is expensive to grow. Cognitive archaeologist Thomas Wynne has argued that the level of planning required to make even the simplest stone tool demanded a kind of spatial reasoning and sequential thinking that most animals never develop. You have to picture the finished tool before it exists. You have to strike the stone at the right angle with the right force in the right order. One mistake and the whole piece shatters. Do you know what a rock rewards you for? Patience. Precision. Repetition. Every one of those qualities happens to also build the exact kind of brain capable of long-term planning, delayed gratification, and problem-solving under pressure. You inherited that brain. It's still running the same software. Now fast forward roughly 2 million years. Stone tools had gotten sharper. More specialized. But your ancestors were still limited by one brutal fact. Every kill required getting close enough to touch the animal you were killing. Close-range hunting against a bison. Or a mammoth. Or a cave lion. Think about the odds there for a second. Then something happened that archaeologist John Shea calls one of the true turning points of human evolution. Someone figured out how to put distance between the hunter and the hunted. The spear didn't start as a weapon thrown from far away. Early versions were thrusting spears, still requiring proximity, still requiring nerve. But evidence from a site in Germany called Skaaningen, where researchers uncovered wooden spears dated to roughly 300,000 years ago, shows something remarkable. These weren't crude sticks. They were balanced, aerodynamically shaped, clearly designed by people who understood how an object moves through the air. That's engineering. Deep in the Ice Age, without written language, without metal, your ancestors had already discovered principles of physics they couldn't have explained but could absolutely apply. And then the real leap happened. The spear thrower. A simple lever that extended the arm's reach, multiplying the force and distance a spear could travel. Suddenly a hunter could kill from meters away instead of inches away. Why does that matter so much? Because it rewired risk itself. For the first time, a smaller, weaker human being with a clever weapon could bring down an animal 10 times their size without ever being in reach of its horns, its teeth, its hooves. The physically strongest members of a group no longer had the only advantage. The smartest ones did. That shift echoes through everything that came after. Weapons stopped being about brute force and started being about outthinking your opponent, whether that opponent had 4 legs or 2. Which brings up an uncomfortable question. If a spear can kill an animal, it can kill a person just as easily. Researchers studying skeletal remains across the Pleistocene have found puncture wounds, healed fractures, and even embedded weapon fragments in ancient human bones, evidence that these tools were turned on rivals just as often as they were turned on prey. A weapon designed for survival is, by definition, also a weapon designed for violence. Your ancestors couldn't separate the two, and in a strange way neither can you. Here's the twist most people never think about. The invention of the weapon didn't just protect early humans from predators or feed their families. It reorganized how they lived together. Anthropologists have long pointed out that once weapons became powerful enough to kill from a distance, physical dominance stopped being the deciding factor in a group's social hierarchy. You didn't have to be the biggest person in camp to hold real power anymore. You just had to be the one holding the spear, or better yet, the one who knew how to make one. Skill became currency. Cleverness became status. And a species that had spent millions of years being hunted slowly became the most dangerous hunter on the planet. Every single piece of that history is still folded into you. When you feel a small thrill picking up a heavy object, some old circuit in your brain is registering potential. When you instinctively judge the weight and balance of something in your hand, you're running an evaluation your ancestors ran 1,000 times a day, every day for millions of years. When you feel a flicker of confidence holding a tool you know how to use well, that's not ego. That's ancient. That's the same reward your ancestors' brains gave them the moment a shaped stone finally worked exactly the way they imagined it would. You don't hunt mammoths. Most of you will never sharpen a spear or knap a flint. But the architecture behind those first weapons never disappeared. It just changed shape. It shows up when you learn to use any tool well enough that it starts to feel like an extension of your own body. A kitchen knife. A tennis racket. A set of car keys held like a weapon walking to your car alone at night. That instinct isn't a flaw. It's one of the oldest inheritances you have. Because long before you ever picked up anything else, your ancestors picked up a rock, and in that moment, decided they weren't going to stay prey any longer.